What is it like in the waiting room? Have you been in the waiting room? Because ultimately, we have been there. Everybody's been there at some point in their life, whether it's that girl that they wanted to date and they had to wait, like it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's because they were nervous, or maybe it was because she wasn't turning back and looking at them the same way that they were looking at her. Wherever that waiting room has been, I just want to ask these guys, what was it like in the waiting room?
This is the Untamed podcast, where only the few dare to go. We're building a community of adventurous high achievers who refuse to trade our dreams for comfortable mediocrity so that we can unleash our untamed potential. Could you be one of the untamed few? Now, your untamed hosts, Mark Lucas and Joel Fritz.
Joel, it's good to be back with the Untamed Few. We have these moments, we all do in our life, where we just feel like we're in the waiting room. And whether we're in the waiting room and we're waiting for news from the doctor, whether we're in the waiting room navigating what the next chapter of our life might be, we get into this waiting room place. And yet, I know for me, it's like I wrestle with anxiety in that place. I wrestle with uncertainty in that place. I wrestle with my self-esteem, if I'm honest, which we are with the beautiful untamed few. It's like, why am I lacking in my security and who I am and my strengths? Why am I wrestling even with my identity in this waiting room? Why do I feel so anxious right now? Why am I so worried about what is next? What's going to be that next chapter? And yet I lack patience. I lack happiness. I really am not the best version of me at home with my wife and my kids, even in my friendships. And at the end of the day, we just get to this place and we want to talk today about what is the best mindset? What is the best posture? What are the best practices? Because you and I have been in the waiting room and we'll share some stories of the waiting room. And we'll continue to be in the waiting room for really the rest of our lives in different ways. So, what are the best practices? What are kind of the best postures that we can have in the waiting room? Because at the end of the day, I believe this in my life, and I think it might be true for all of us. The waiting room has the potential to be the place of exponential growth. Like we can have tremendous growth, true, like inside out growth can happen in beautiful ways if we just really understand how can we really have the best mindset, the best posture, the best headspace to really be able to process the waiting room well. So that's the setup. I know we're going to share some stories about being in the waiting room and what we've done well, how we've kind of fumbled a little bit in the waiting room. But I know to some varying degree, guys are in the waiting room or guys have been coming through the waiting room in this last season of their life. So, yeah, let's jump into it, Joel. Excited to get into this today. Yeah, no doubt, Mark. It's definitely a relevant place. And so, because it's so relevant, I want to actually ask the guys listening, watching this simple question. What is it like in the waiting room? Have you been in the waiting room? Because ultimately, we have been there. Everybody's been there at some point in their life, whether it's that girl that they wanted to date and they had to wait, like it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's because they were nervous, or maybe it was because she wasn't turning back and looking at them the same way that they were looking at her. Wherever that waiting room has been, I just want to ask these guys, what was it like in the waiting room? And I think all of us can say there's some sort of anxiety, like you just mentioned earlier. I mean, we might even compare it to an actual doctor's office. If you go into the doctor's office, depending on what you know what? Actually, I'm going to compare it to a dentist's office, right? I don't know, because a doctor's office can be really big or really small, but the dentist is like genuinely just uncomfortable just about every time that you go, right? And so you're sitting in the dentist's office. What is that like? We know that feeling. Something's coming. You have some tooth pain, and you know that the fix is not going to be pleasant, but it's going to be good. So you're there because you know you need to be. You're there because you know there's something good is coming. But when you're sitting in that waiting room, there's that anxious feeling. There's that, I wish I could do something about that. I mean, what is it that we squirm a little bit? We're kind of uncomfortable in that situation, but it's very much a metaphor for life, like you're talking about. When we're sitting in those uncomfortable situations, and largely I'd say it's because we're out of control, right? It's out of our control, the thing that we're talking about. So we're kind of having to be hands off and wait to see what happens, even though something really good may be on the other side. Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think that's exactly right. I think this all stems from, at least when I look at my anxiety, I look at my lack of peace, I look at my lack of patience for sure in the waiting room. It's really stemmed from a lack of control. Is that things are not in the sequence of timeline of the way that I'm projecting them, the way that I'm anticipating them, the way that I'm forecasting for them. And at the end of the day, I think for me, I've got to be able to get control of my mind. And I want to talk about the mindset here for a moment because at the end of the day, I have to ask myself, and this is what I really strive to ask myself often in these moments of the waiting room: what is true right now? Like, what are the things right now that are true? And identify those things that are true right now in the waiting room and process those things. Here are the things that are true. I kind of work through a list in my head. And then I say, okay, the things that are true, the things that I can insert myself and have some control over, great. We can tackle those. We can put a plan in place to be able to move forward with those things. And that tends to be, for me, kind of a small list of things that I can control. The majority of the list is the things that are out of my control. The things that, whether I admit it or not, I have to surrender those things. Surrender those things to the timing of whenever those things will happen. Surrender those things, you and I both men of faith, to God, and really say, okay, how do I still have peace now that I've surrendered some things that are out of my control? And that helps me free up a mindset of what's true right now. Think about those things. What's helpful right now? Think about those things. What's necessary right now to think about? Think about those things. And I really, because I'm a vacillator, I ruminate thoughts often. And if we allow our minds to go and we're just constantly vacillating and ruminating, or the things that really are not true we're thinking about, the things that are not helpful we're thinking about, the things that are out of our control we're not thinking about, the things that really aren't necessary we're not thinking about, that is just going to be a Hoover vacuum to suck all of the happiness, all of the peace, all of the contentment, all of the joy is just going to suck it right out. So I've got to realize when I'm doing this and I'm in this loop, this negative loop, and I've really got to get control of my mind. And there might only be like one specific thing that I can control, or one or two specific things that are true and helpful and necessary. And I just got to really focus on those things and just trust that process of being as patient as I can in the waiting room and identifying there's a lot of things out of my control. Give me patience, give me a mindset to focus on those things. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I want to tell a story that I just remembered, my own personal experience here in just a second, but I cannot help but mention a tool that Stephen Covey gave us all a number of years ago. In his book, his 7 Habits book, which was super popular, he had this example that he said most high performers are able to do this in the morning. They get out of bed and they almost draw circles in a sense that they circle the things that are within their control, and then they let everything else outside of that circle go. Because if we draw that circle too big and we include all of these things out of our control, which I think news and honestly social media, if we're sitting there and scrolling, we're assuming this posture and we're looking and looking and looking. So much of that is truly outside of our control. There's not a whole lot we can do about it. But if it's actually affecting our mental health, if it's actually affecting what we think we can get done in that day or distracting us from the important things that we need to get done in that day, then it's highly problematic. So if we can draw that circle around the things that we do have control over, and we can say, yes, this is important. Yes, this is something that I should do. Then we need to do those things and really do our best to forget about the rest. And so it's very important. And that story that I'm thinking about is I'm recalled to being in Italy in 2020.
Mm.
Early 2020, we had just gone over to Italy in 2019 as to start a church with another group of people. It was a fascinating experience. But as we're there, all of a sudden, there's these rumors talking about this virus that is happening in the north. And then, if you recall, what happened in the United States is that all eyes turned to Italy because it had happened in the east, but then it moved to the west. And the first landing point for the west was Italy. And so here we are in Italy wondering what to do. And everybody's looking to us to see what's it like over there? What's it like over there? And I remember the moment when Donald Trump got on TV and basically said, Americans, come home. And we're over in Italy where it's happening, the epicenter. And he's saying, come home. And we thought, what do we do? And we really had a decision to face. But ultimately, we decided to stay and wait it out. And I remember there's all when you go on you start a new venture or you start an adventure, right? There's always that sense of anticipation and the build up to it. But then when you get into the adventure, you face these lulls or these change points come, and this was one of those change points. Up to this point, we transitioned from Phoenix, we had come over to Italy, we had vision, we had mission, we had clarity. We were moving the ball forward in the areas that we wanted to be moving the ball forward in. And then COVID came and it just put everything to a halt. Now we have the decision to transition back to the United States. And it was hard, just as a side note, it was hard seeing everybody's Instagram stories and everything as in Arizona, this was March. So the weather was great. They told everybody, don't come into work. And so we're watching everybody out hiking in the desert, like on their streets with all their friends and neighbors and getting to know each other. And we were literally locked in a 3-bedroom apartment in Italy for the next 62 days, waiting. And during that time, oh, wow, my mind was going stir crazy. And so I was very much thinking about those things. But then you'd start to hear these stories that would come in about people getting COVID and somebody passed away. You would hear a story of this may last. How long can this possibly last? Is everybody going to get COVID? And there's all these things. And you go, why did I make the decision to stay here? But one way or another, whether it was a good decision or a bad decision, we're in the waiting room. We don't know exactly what's on the other side of the door, but we do know that we're here and we have to make a decision every single day. Am I going to concentrate on everything that could be, or am I going to concentrate on what I have control over right now?
Yeah. And I think quickly, because I know we're kind of running through time, one of the things that I want to share story wise and really just give two practical steps that have helped me. And I pray that these steps would help you as well. I pray they'd be some things that you could really chew on. As we moved here to Atlanta a year ago, and kind of the quick and fast story of that is I accept the position at the church that I grew up in, gonna be the campus pastor, always thought about what it would be like to be a campus pastor, especially in the church that I love so much. My mom still works in the bookstore and attends that church, and we have so many fond memories of this church. So I say yes to this position, walk through a pretty rigorous process of interviewing, and then just about 10 days after that, saying yes to the position, my wife and we all obviously we had a lot of prayer and conversation around this. We really felt led because of my wife's job to move here to Atlanta. So my wife's in a new position. She's not in the waiting room. She's happy go lucky on the new adventure.
Digital adventure.
She's
Exactly.
heard to the next chapter in the book and she's reading all the pages and she's excited about it. My kids are in their new adventure. They're meeting new friends and enjoying their school and enjoying their sports and all that. And here's dad with the dogs in the waiting room, trying to figure out what in the snikes am I doing here in Atlanta? Like, why am I the only one in the family in the waiting room? Like, where is my chapter? And why am I still stuck in this chapter that I'm in right now? Because I don't want to be here. I do not want to be in this waiting room. And I remember a good friend of mine told me this years ago, but it dawned on me. And I mentioned the dogs because it's what happened mainly with the time that I would have in the morning after everybody went off. My wife went to her job, my kids are at school, and I would just have time with the dogs. And I began to just process with God. And no matter where you are right now in your walk,
whether you have faith or don't have faith, I really encourage you, even if there's some question marks there in where you might be with the faith journey and having a relation with God, to just have some conversations with God. And the two questions that I would ask God often, especially in this waiting room season, the first question was this: God, what is it right now that you're showing me? What is it right now that you're showing me? Because I don't want to miss. I know there's some valuable lessons for me to grow through and me to learn in this place of the waiting room. So I'd ask that question, and then it's a beautiful setting where I was walking, trees all around, everything was green compared to Arizona, and I would just listen. I could hear the wind going through the trees. I would just listen. And I would just allow my kind of inner consciousness, my inner soul and being begin to just kind of work through that first question. And then when I began to get some clarity, a little bit of clarity in that first question, God, what is it that you're doing right now and show me right now? There was actually just a deer, speaking of beauty, that ran across my front yard. But what are you doing in this moment right now in my life in the waiting room? That was the first question. The second question was this: God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Give me some understanding. And that, what do you want me to do? That could be a friend kind of helping me with that. That could be my wife helping me with that. Again, these are not God speaking through a bush as it's burning and I'm walking the dog. But these are these conversations that I have and God wants to have with all of us to be able to navigate this waiting room process. What are you doing, Lord? I don't want to miss it. I want to grow in this time. And then secondly, what do you want me to do? Because when we look in the Bible, 40 is a special number, but 40 days, 40 years, there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of waiting in the Bible. And yet in that waiting, there's preparation. In that waiting, there's preparing for that next chapter. But it doesn't happen without really allowing God and allowing us to be grown in that place to really prepare ourselves for what's next.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with you, Mark. And I think that before we sign off on this one, I would suggest that a lot of what you're saying and a lot of the things that our people are facing have to do with how well they're managing their core values and returning to really thinking through and trying to understand the most important things in their lives. That's going to affect what they do with the time in the waiting room. Because if you're in the waiting room and really the anxiety starts to come and the unknown is out there, you're asking yourself, what can I control? You're trying to get in touch with your inner person, like you said, because that's the opportunity that you do have. But with that, I mean, what are you going to spend time on? And I think that's where core values come in, is they should dictate the fact that we should be paying attention to the things that matter most to us. So whether it be taking the time to reflect and do exercises like thinking, well, what do I want written on my gravestone? What kind of dad do I want my kids to say that I was? What kind of husband do I want my wife to say that I was? Because most of those things can be done in the time of waiting, right? Because we're not on the adventure. We're not with people doing it. We're in the slowness, in the steadiness, and the quietness, and those people are still there, but we're not all doing something together. So guess what? It requires a new level of intimacy. And I think we often fear intimacy, right? Whether they start to know our internal musings or we get to know theirs and actually take the time to listen to theirs, that's called intimacy, when we really start to pay attention to the person next to us. So it's a great opportunity right there to get in touch with ourselves and to get in touch with the people that we love the most.
It's really good. We hope and pray that this conversation was a blessing to you. We hope and pray that this conversation helps you in a moment right now or a moment you're walking into of the waiting room. So Joel and I are encouraged that we get to do life alongside you and just having an amazing week, having an amazing day, and we'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
If this episode sparked something in you, please subscribe and even share it with someone who's ready to take their life to the next level. We're always on the hunt for men who are looking to become untamed and release their untamed potential. Also, if you found value in this conversation, then please rate the podcast and leave a comment. It makes a huge impact in building our community. We'll see you next time when the adventure continues, or maybe when yours begins.